You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or ask provider for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Available on the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at Twitter-options, Facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility with index. Each week, we'll take activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MIAX is now trading radically faster dissemination and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with SPKEX. Learn more about SPKEX at www.miaxoptions.com/SPKEX. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility V, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions LLC, please visit Time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back for the penultimate episode of Volatility Views for the year 2022. Yes, one more lurking on the horizon, listeners, where we get to break down the year that was, the year that is to come. We look back on our predictions from this time last year. What did we think Vol held in store for us for the coming year? All sorts of fun. Maybe give out some fun prizes if we have any fun winners out there. All sorts of fun. So look forward to that. Next week, the final Vol Views of the year. But this week, we got one more to put in the can. Before then, my name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. As well as, of course, from the ever-scintillating, ever-compelling, at least we tend to think so around these parts, and we are not biased at all, Options Insider Radio Network. I want to thank all of you out there who have made 2022 just a ridiculous year for the network by just about any metric we can throw at it out there. Remember, if you do like what you hear and you're on the on-demand side, one of the legion of on-demand listeners, do keep rating and reviewing wherever you get the show. It clearly does help new people continue to discover the content. And then, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want more Vol content in your life, let's say some awesome pro Q&As, some of the best minds in the world of options and volatility on the planet, as well as awesome Options Oddities episodes where we break down the entire week from a unusual activity perspective and probably talk ourselves into one or two or half a dozen very dubious trades if you want to join all that fun. And then, of course, get live access to this, everything else we do, the Pro podcast feed with now coming up on 200 episodes of Pro goodness, awesome giveaways. It's almost time to give away the December crate. It's crazy. So get your name in the hat. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to join that party. Or for you cool kids, you need your own URL. You need your own invite past the velvet rope. There you go. /secret club. But that's just for you. It's just for you, the guy I'm talking to right now, not the person next to you, just you. /Secret Club is the place to go. As we keep on going into the show, joining me for this penultimate episode of Volatility Views for the year 2022, none other than the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, beaming in from the Southern Volatility Mecca, the second to last time for the year. Mr. Meatball, how go things in the South? Are you guys getting frozen out like the rest of the country?
Yeah, it's below freezing here. People are up in arms.
Do they even own snowplows in Texas? Do they have winter jackets? What's going on?
There's no snow. There's no snow. It's sunny. It's just cold. And yes, people are freaking out. People's pipes are freezing. So hope everybody is safe and well taken care of on this holiday season.
Are you laughing at all your neighbors? Are they coming to your house and saying, "Can I borrow a winter jacket? Oh, Chicagoan." Is that what they're saying to you?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny how little of that stuff people have. But then again, when it's 40, these people dress up for like it's,
Yeah, I'm in Florida right now, and it was 50-something the other night, and you would have thought it was, Arctic tundra. People had their parkas on, had scarves. It was all pretty funny. I did hear, as a random aside, I am not in Chicago, and I did hear that it's going to be 35 below this weekend for the Bears game. You can get a nice Bears ticket for a whopping $4. So what do you think, Mr. Meatball? You in? You going to fly back to Chi-Town and take in a Bears game for $4 at 35 below?
Sounds incredible. Who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, that's the perfect opportunity to go see Justin Fields play.
Yes, 35 below. What could possibly go wrong? I think instead of doing that, Mr. Meatball and I will keep on rolling right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review. You know what the deal is by now, unless, of course, you're one of our legion of new listeners. Then welcome. This is indeed the portion of the show where we break down the week that was, and indeed still is, from a vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity. All sorts of fun perspectives. Going to throw in all the big products, the futures, the options, the ETPs. We'll see where it goes from there. And coming into the start of the show, it seems like we're on the cusp of turning pretty much everything green. We were hanging out mixed for most of the session. The Dow was slightly up. The S&P was kind of hanging around unched, and the NASDAQ was red. We did just tick green. So we are now in the green across the board. So the markets have ticked from a mixed end to the week, listeners, to now a green end to the week. And you know what that means, listeners. Vol has struggled to catch a bid even on some very dire down days. It wasn't until yesterday, really, the second leg of that sell-off where we blew past 2% and the S&P down to about 2.75%. That second leg seemed to spook some people, and that's where we saw vol start to catch a bid. But heading into a holiday weekend, if the markets are even remotely green, then vol is not going to be catching a bid, and that's pretty much the case right now. As we kicked off the show, Spikes was hanging out right around 21.5. That's down about 0.7 of a point from where it was this time last week. And VIX Cash was right around a 21.20. Listeners, down nearly 2 points, about 1.8 points from where it was this time last week. The weird outlier here is, of course, VVIX, the vol of vol itself. It continues to just erode to nothing. It's at a 79 right now, listeners, down 14 points. I get it. It's the holiday season. Seasonality is a thing with volatility, and so this is not known to be a rock'em sock'em period, usually from a vol perspective. But we also know, listeners, VVIX probably not going to hang out in the mid to high 70s range for very long. So we'll keep an eye on that coming out of the holiday weekend into the week next week, listeners. See what kind of vol we get going into our final show of the year. Our old friend, the Viking, our second to last check-in on this one, aka VSPKES for the year, at a 101, down a whopping 12 points from where it was this time last week. Again, I know a lot of you are still not that familiar with the Vikings, so the range for the year now, listeners, the high was actually a little bit over a year ago now, 206 roughly, back on December 3rd of last year, and the low was 57 and about a quarter. That was back on October 28th of this year. So we're doing a lot of living in V-spikes over the past year. 101 is kind of hanging out, obviously closer to the low than to the high, but obviously not exactly blowing the doors off from a vol perspective. So Mr. Meatball, kind of a bit of a weird end to a very weird week. Before we get into today's action, I'm curious, I want to pick your brain a little bit on yesterday's action as well, because that's where we saw vol. If it can be said it caught a bid this week, it was yesterday. Saw the usual response from VIX and its ilk. It was kind of a bit of a shrug on the shoulders, slight uptick, nothing crazy out there. Then once we accelerated past the 2% level in the S&P and we got down to nearly 3%, that seemed to be where vol started to, like I said, if it can't be said to have caught a bid, that seemed to be the moment yesterday. We saw VIX starting to tick up back into a 23 handle, threatening a 24 handle. Spikes doing the same thing. Then, of course, the day went on and we saw that mitigate a bit. But let's start there. What were your thoughts on yesterday's vol response to the market movements? Then we'll get into what's lighting up your tape today, sir.
Yeah, yesterday was really interesting because you're right. It just kind of slept its way through the beginning of the selling. And then when we got that kind of second leg lower and the S&P had blown through 3,800, vol really picked up. They were coming for it. And then as we rallied, we got back above 3,800. They immediately came in and dumped every option they could. So vol did as vol tends to do. It spiked and then unspiked rather unceremoniously. And then and that was the kind of crazy price action. We never really saw a big chase for VIX call options, even like puts. You actually saw maybe a little bigger vol spike in like Apple than you did in anything else. Apple, which continues to kind of look sick. So
the great unspiking of vol, that could probably be the title. If we had one show to encompass the year, that might be it. The great unspiking of vol. We've seen a lot of that over the course of this past year. But you're right, yesterday was weird. We got all the way up. We kissed 24, Mr. Meatball, 23.98. And then they just came for it again. You're right. They wanted no more vol, no part of it after that, and just crushed it all the way back down to where we are again today, 21 and a quarter. Let's get into today's vol action, such as it is, Mr. Meatball. It seems like the markets are fighting. They are struggling to get green. We're going into a holiday weekend, so vol already had an uphill battle coming into today anyway. And now the markets are turning green. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support for vol here. What's your take on what's lighting it up today, sir?
Yeah, they're coming at it today. VIX futures are, got slammed real hard earlier in the day, and continue to look relatively soft. So there is zero demand for vol right now. VIX is off its lows right now, as the S&P is off the highs. But every time we hit a new high, they take vol down just a little bit more.
Nobody wants to carry it into this holiday weekend. Oh, interesting stuff. Let's get on out to the land of the aforementioned futures there. Spikes futures continue to do their thing, listeners, coming into the end of the year, looking for some more volume continuously out there. Let's roll on into the VIX futures, listeners, as we come into the show now. 2022 is a distant memory behind us now, listeners. The D's future has rolled off the board, taken the last vestiges of this year with it. Now we are firmly looking ahead, firmly looking into 2023. The Jan future is the front month. A Feb rolling in right behind it. Coming into showtime, that Jan future down about 1 2/3 points from where it was this time last week, and right behind it, the Feb future down about 1.2 points out there. So they are coming for it. Again, not entirely surprising given what we're seeing out there in the broad market. Just looking at the futures curve going out here a little bit as we were kicking off the show. Once again, the high for that curve seems to be out there in that July-August timeframe, which again, is a little bit surprising. That is kind of like this time right now, listeners, the end of December, July, August, not typically known to be a seasonal bastion of volatility. So seeing it threatening a 27 handle, 2680 all the way out in July and August is a little bit strange. But then again, this year has been nothing but strange. And this time last week, that July future was at a 27.5. So they have come for the farther portion of the curve as well. Mr. Meatball, sir, what is catching your eye out there in the ever-eroding vol surface this week?
Yeah, even as we were kind of rallying yesterday, they kept the curve in contango. The spread between, as it should into a long weekend, the spread between the cash and the future is pretty darn wide. That will probably correct itself on Tuesday, but there appears to be some pretty decent pressure on vol premiums right now. I will say that.
Does it surprise you the degree of juice that they're pricing out into that late summer period of next year? Is there some vol event out there that I'm missing, sir?
No, I think they're just continuing to be nervous, continuing to be worried about, another shoe to drop or the economy falling apart. So I think you're just looking at traders being a little bit cautious and hedging off.
That part makes a lot of sense. I just think if you're going to do that, maybe do it throughout the entire term structure, all of next year. Why July and August is this bastion of volatility is an interesting question. But then again, we've said it many times on the show, listeners. The answers to all of your vol questions are lurking somewhere in that volatility surface. You just have to find it, listeners. Let's go to our penultimate check-in with SPKEX options for the year 2022. Well, I'm going to say penultimate a lot today. I just like that word, listen. I don't get a chance to use it very often. So when it rolls around, listeners, you're going to hear it. And not a heck of a lot open in SPKEX options, to be frank, right now, listeners. A lot of it has rolled off the board with these expirations. So they're kind of waiting for the new positioning. I'm also a little disappointed we have not seen the return of the deep in the money paper that we saw lurking in there for a lot of the October, November expiration cycles. It seems like some people, for whatever reason, got a bee in their bonnet with spikes that they had to go 170 and 180 puts and 10 calls and not else. It was hilarious. It was paper I've really never seen in a major vol product before. Then it kind of all rolled off the board with November, and we have not seen its replacement yet. Out there right now, it's kind of a lot of light seasonal paper. Listeners, the top position right now in SPKEX options are the Jan 19 calls, followed by number 2, the Jan 50. So now it's lining up more with VIX, the 50s. Then we've got the Jan 10s, the Jan 11s, and the Jan 12s, rounding out your top 5 positions out there in SPKEX options land. And heading into a holiday weekend, listeners, is not usually the moment when VIX is just going to light the world on fire, barring some sort of crazy development. That's pretty much what we're seeing out there right now, listeners. VIX is actually doing a little bit more paper than I expected, given I thought we'd be at $150, $180, maybe 200,000 if we were lucky today. But no, 339,000 contracts as of the start of this portion of the show, listeners. So that's actually decent volume heading into a normally quiet holiday weekend. The ADV also finally starting to reverse, starting to tick back up. As you listened to the show last week, listeners, I expressed some doubts about the ADV numbers out there in VIX options. It just made no sense how almost every day last week was far north, well north of the ADV. Some days were kissing 1 million contracts, and yet the ADV went down last week. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. This week, it is finally starting to turn around. The ADV back up to 549,000, up 31,000. Like we said, 339,000 contracts on the tape today. So a good chance of hitting that ADV today as well, which again is surprising heading into a holiday weekend. Most people have already gotten the heck out of Dodge, listeners. Days like today, usually pretty light days. Let's see what is going on in the top 10 positions out there in VIX options right now. Once again, 9-1 calls over puts in our top 10 listeners. Let's see if we can play that. That Where's Waldo? Where is our lone puts? We'll see if we can find him together. Number 10. Only cost you 102,000 contracts to break into the top 10 this week. That's because obviously Deese rolled off the board. took a lot of OI with it. We were well north of 10 million contracts. Now they're down to about 7.75 million. So a lot of OI going the way of the dodo, with D's expiration has yet to be replaced out there. That's why it's only 102,000 contracts to break into the top 10. That gets you to the Jan 25. So all things considered, given the paper we've seen go up for much of this year, Jan 25's a fairly reasonable contract. Then we get to it again, listeners. Number 9, 106,000 of the Feb 40s. Up there, but not quite as crazy as some of the others we're going to see. Then number 8, we found them, listeners. We found Waldo this week, 107,000 of the June 15 puts, my favorite strike on the board. You know I got a few of those in my back pocket for a rainy day out there as well, listeners. And obviously someone else does, to the tune of 107,000. Remember, those went up a couple of months ago. We talked about that big 100,000 lot. We had fun with it on the show. We actually pennied it for some paper here, and they've been interesting to watch ever since out there. But that also goes to show how much DOI rolled off the board, because these June puts haven't really changed in a couple of months. They've been 107,000 open out there forever, but now they've made their way back into the top 10 at number 8, no less. Number 7, 118,000 of the Jan 35. So once again, fairly normal paper. Number 6, $1.36 of the Feb 60s. Now we're starting to get into it, listeners. Number 5, $1.55 of the March 80s. All right, here we go. That's the kind of paper we know for 2022. Number 4, $1.73 of the Feb 70s. Number 3, $1.76 of the Feb 80s. Number 2, 210,000 of the March 75s. And rounding out the top 10 this week, listeners, 233,000 of our old friend, the Jan 70s. So once again, you take out those puts and then a couple of calls in the 20 to 30 range. Everything else, listeners, you're talking pretty much 7 of the top 10 is just, shall we say, the outlandish strike. Mark, maybe that could be a secondary theme for VIX. We were joking before about the unspiking of volatility this year. Maybe a second theme for the year, such as there is this was just the year that the market awakened to all the joys of VIX upside, and they continue to be open for size this week, sir. What say you?
Yeah, they're coming for upside. They're still looking for some sort of shoe to drop. We have yet to see that develop, though. So I'm interested in what they're looking for, because so far they have not found it.
Obviously, a lot of this paper is going to be open through at least March expiration. Do you think we'll see a continuance of this paper into next year, Mark? We'll continue to see the 70s, 80s pars and above be the dominant paper all the way through 2023, Mark?
You know, I think until vol truly relaxes, that is a strong possibility. That is my take.
Love to see what research it is, what funds suddenly awaken just to the fact that, hey, this upside, there's something to it. We want it. This is a cheap way to hedge whatever it is, a credit portfolio, whatever the case may be out there. And they have come for it en masse, listener. Let's see what they're coming for out there today. Like I said, 339,000 contracts on the tape. And such as it is, the big dog today, the Feb 25 puts. I did not expect a Feb put strike to be dominating the tape out there today, but that's what we got, listeners. Feb 25 puts, 32,000 of those, followed by number 2, 30,000 of the Feb 30s. Number 3, 30,000 as well of the March 30s. So that paper lines up pretty tight. Maybe a bit of a Feb March roll, even though it's very early to be rolling out of your Feb. But again, we have seen stranger things, listeners. Number 4, 30,000 as well of the March 25 puts. So a lot of paper lining up there. Maybe we got some risk reversals going up as well. I'll have to go dig in a little bit to today's paper. And then number 5, right behind the listeners, we have the Feb 25 calls, 23,000 of those. Yesterday, 466,000 contracts on the tape. So again, we have a light week now where just about every day was below the ADV, listener, except for one. And we have the ADV now ticking up. So we have all sorts of weird fun going on out there. 492,000 contracts on the tape. That's Wednesday. 466,000 contracts on the tape for Thursday. The big dog, such as it was on Thursday, 37,000 of the Feb 23s, followed by 28,000 of the Jan 21 puts. Number 3, 27,000 of the Jan 27 calls. Number 4, 26,000 of the Jan 22 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a somewhat active day, I suppose you can say, yesterday, 26,000 of the Jan 25 calls. Wednesday, a little bit more paper, such as it was on the tape. 492,000 contracts on the tape. Once again, the big dog, 32,000. That seems to be our range. We're hanging out in the 30,000s for most of this week for the big trades, listeners. That gets us to the Jan 50s. So once again, getting up to some of those intriguing strikes, followed by number 2, 22,000 of the Jan 36 calls. Number 3, 21,000 of the Jan 70s. So maybe some 50-70 action going up on Wednesday. Number 4, 19,000, almost 20,000 of the Jan 25 calls. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, 19,500 of the Jan 28 calls. Getting out to Tuesday, which was far and away the most active day of the week, listeners. Almost a million contracts on the tape. 947,000 contracts on the tape, to be precise. The big dog on Tuesday, 68,000 of the Dees 21 puts. Again, we were heading into Dees rolling off the boards. That usually tends to gin up a little bit of paper on the Tuesday before it, listeners, followed by 65,000 of the Dees 30s. Number 3, 51,000 of the Dees 27 calls. Number 4, we got the first Jan on the list on Tuesday, 37,000 of the Jan 24 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a fairly active Tuesday, listeners, 33,000 of the Dees 25 calls. Getting out to Monday, and this is about the size we're used to out there now, 509,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog on Monday, 58,000 of the Dees 22 puts, followed by 44,000 of the Dees 21 puts. Number 3, 32,000 of the Jan 30s. Number 4, 15,000 of the May 20s. That's an interesting one, the May 20s. And then number 5, on a fairly active Monday, 14,000 of the Dees 22 calls. Intriguing. I'll have to dig into those 20s as well. Mr. Meatball, sir, a fairly decently active week, all things considered. Obviously today, kind of light, but again, we are heading into a holiday weekend. We did kiss a million earlier this week, so that's nothing to sneeze at there. What caught your eye out there in VIX options this week, sir?
You know, the big trade today is actually kind of interesting in VIX. They're buying strangles in VIX. They're buying the Feb 25 and 30 strangle, Feb 25, 30, the March 25, 30. Those are going up for some size. Kind of interesting that those trades are going up the way they're going up. Right there, you want to know why you've got your volume. Right there, you're dealing with over 100,000 contracts in those two trades that went up within 6 seconds of each other. And then you've got some Jan 32 calls on the tape as well that trader is out buying.
Yeah, I just mentioned those earlier. I was going to dig into those, and you're right. I just pulled that up as you were talking, and you're right. There are some strangles. I thought it was a weird time to be doing a roll, and that is not the roll. They were going up for the strangles, listeners. The Feb 25-30 strangle went up 29,600 times, and then they also did it in March, 26,600 times. Let's see. Obviously, there's a lot of OI on those strikes, so it's hard to tell if that was all opening or not, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. You like that strangle, Mr. Meatball? You like picking up a Feb 25-30? It looks like they did it for about it was like 410 or so.
It's an interesting trade to, bet on vol moving one way or the other, making a decision. So it kind of makes some sense to me. Yeah, I don't hate it.
I think that's a good way to describe it. I don't hate it. I'm not overly in love with it either.
It's not one I would do, but I get why they would do it.
We've seen vol go to die in trades like this recently too. So intriguing stuff. I wonder which leg is the most challenging of that right now. But yes, intriguing stuff. You like that, listeners? You like that? A Feb 25-30 strangle. Obviously, you need vol to get moving out of the gate here in the new year for that bad boy to pay off. Or would you maybe be more of a seller of it around a little bit north of $4? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know, other listeners. Aside from today's strangle action, anything else catching your eye out there? Maybe some interesting paper going into the Wednesday print, sir?
Yeah, Wednesday, that print was pretty interesting. We did see traders buying up the 21s and 22 puts on that Tuesday. And now we know why. VIX got absolutely smoked, settled 20 and a quarter. So if you bought the Dees 24s and 22s and 23s and 21s, you made some decent dough. Those were going for about 15 cents Tuesday night. They went out 75. So that was a pretty nice trade on the print. The rest of the paper on Tuesday was mostly just some Jan and Feb calls. You did have a little D's trade go up on the cheap in case we got a big move. And then on Monday was a slow one, but they were buying 22 and 21 puts again. Wednesday, the day of actual VIX expiration, biggest trade was those May 60s that went up. Good luck with those. And then you had a bunch of small stuff. Not a really particularly busy day for volatility, even yesterday, as we were tanking. Traders were selling VIX premium. A trader came in and sold the 23 calls in January. They were selling some, they did like a Jan, they sold some Jan puts, bought some Jan 19s. So it was just kind of interesting paper across the board, to say the least.
You still find yourself playing as much in VIX options these days, or is all your attention, all your joy, all your fun sucked up in these 0-day SPX contracts?
I do love those 0 days. I am long some longer dated VIX puts that I like, and I may actually go for some more of those today now that they've gotten cheaper. Because I sold a bunch at a higher price. Might be time to pick up some here now that you mention it.
There you go. That's what we're here for.
Thanks for the reminder.
That's what we're here for on the show. The reminders to scoop your VIX down. Make sure, listeners, pick up your VIX downside if you haven't done so yet out there. Let's get on out to some of the other vol products that you may or may not be trading. These next two probably in the latter category. Good old SPKX coming into Showtime, 21.90. Down almost 1.5 points, about 1.4 points. Of course, our old friend SPKX is the plain vanilla, non-levered product out there. It's still waiting to kind of attract the crowd out there. It's doing an ADV of a whopping 9 contracts right now. That's down from 11 last week. So not a lot of folks piling into SPKX right now. Getting out to good old Sparky. It's levered 1.5 friend out there. Doing a little bit more paper, a little bit more business. Trading 19 3/4 right now, down about exactly 2 handles. The ADV, a frothy 21. So doing a little bit more paper out there. Actually, there is enough paper out there to look at a quick top 5 out here in Sparky. The number 1 size position, we have a whopping 154 listeners of the Jan 35s, followed by 88 of the Jan 36s, 52 for number 3 of the Jan 29s, number 4, 26 of the Jan 28s. And rounding out the top 5 and everyone's favorite Sparky, a whopping 15 of the March 54s. I just love that strike there. Mr. Meatball, the good old SPKX and SPKY, yet to really light the world on fire. What, if anything, is catching your eye out there in those two this week?
Yeah, they continue to not be that crazy, but a little bit of, there's a one lot trading today. Somebody bought the 20 puts, and you've got some, they're doing what they're supposed to do, behaving the way you expect them to behave, and tracking the way you'd expect them to track. So no reason not to trade it.
Everyone's kind of playing the wait and see game out there. No one wants to be the first one to dive in. No one wants to be the first person to knock on the door at the party. So they're waiting until some other folks join in, then they could sneak in to the old vol party out there. We'll keep an eye on those as we keep on rolling, listeners. Let's get on out to a product, another one that seems to have a hard time attracting folks to the party. This is SVIX at about a 1440, up about 0.8 of a point. Not doing a ton of paper out there yet again. Only trading on Fridays when we do the show. It's not even doing that, even though the ADV is up to almost 1,100 contracts. So it can do paper when it wants. This time last week, there were more than 2,000 contracts on the tape. So SVIX tends to trade in spurts, and today not one of those days. I'm curious for you, Mr. Meatball. I had this discussion with the once and future Dr. VIX on the show a couple of weeks ago. He seems to be a bit of a proponent of SVIX. He likes it. He likes the underlying. He's not really trading the options. Really, no one's out there trading the options. So those have yet to catch fire. But he seems to like SVIX. It seems to be doing what he wants out of it. I'm curious for you. Obviously, we came into this year. There was a lot of hand-wringing, oh my God, how could you bring back this product? This is going to be the death of all vol. And so far, we have not seen that. We also have not seen a lot of people trading it. I'm curious for you, is SVIX living up to the hype for you? Do you like it? Do you trade it? Do you want more of it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a good buy and hold vehicle. I think when you get some big spikes and you want to fade volatility, it's one, instead of trading the options, you can just buy some SVIX and it will respond the way you expect. It's had a nice little run since getting on October 12th. This was $9.89 on the low. It's up 50% on its highs. It got near 15. If we get an extended period of low volatility, this thing is gonna build on itself pretty quick and could potentially make you some decent dough. I don't hate it.
Will be interesting to see exactly what kind of ceiling we can get here on SVIX as we keep on. What are your thoughts, listeners? Do you love SVIX? Do you hate it? Do you like the underlying? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know. Some people are out there playing in the options to the tune of 2,361 for the number one position out there right now. That's the Jan 14s. By the way, we're at about a 1440 right now, listeners, up about 0.8 of a point. Number two, we have 1,300 of the Jan 16 calls, followed by number three, 1,200 of the Jan 6 puts. Number four, 1,000 of the March 25s. And rounding out the top five in SVIX, we have about 700 of the Jan 4 puts. That's an interesting one. Let's get on out to everyone's favorite friend, UVIX. And no, at least not right now, listeners, that we have not heard anything about UVIX or our friend UVXY, more importantly, going the way of the dodo yet. To the upside, UVIX, and we kicked off the show at about a 610, down about 0.9 of a point, and still pretty much hanging out there as we get into this segment. Even though starting to come alive today, 5,200 contracts on the tape already today, listeners. So UVIX putting up some numbers. The ADV is 6,072. That's actually down on the week, a couple hundred contracts. But a spoiler alert, it seems like we are going to hit that out there today. Now, let's look really quickly at what's trading out there today. We got the DEES expiring next week on the 30th. 7 puts going up 1,362 times, followed by the DEES expiring today. 7 puts going up 1,361 times. Methinks I smell a roll out there, listeners, keeping that 7 put action alive. If that's the case, that's interesting. So we're at a 610. I don't know where they put those puts on, but those puts are looking pretty good right now. So why they wouldn't just close them out and take their money and run, I don't know. But they're going back to the 7 strike again, it seems like, out there today, listeners. Followed by number 3 today, we have 300 of the March 25s, 251 of the DEES 4s, and 251 of the DEES 9 calls. Let me just pull up that trade here really quickly, see if I can see it out there. Here we go. Yeah, they did it in small chunks out there. It looks like they did it. They did that roll for 9 cents. They got rid of the 7 puts coming away this week for 88 cents, and they bought the 7 puts expiring next week for 97 cents. Interesting. I'll have to go and see if I can. Maybe while the meatball is talking, I'll go and dig in to see where they put those puts on, because that seems like a kind of trade that's working out all right. I don't know why you're in a hurry to keep that partay alive. So they put them on the 16th. Let's look really quickly, listen to see if we can find where they put them on. That'll probably tell us why they're not in a hurry. They bought them for 55 cents. So they're up 30 odd cents on this trade. Not the worst trade in the world. I guess they want more. They want more listeners. They're going back to the party. They're willing to spend 9 more cents to keep that party alive. What are your thoughts? You like that trade, listeners? Would you do that? Would you take that 30 odd cents and get the heck out of Dodge with your profits and live to fight another day? Let's see what's going on out there in the top UVIX positions, and we'll get the meatballs thoughts on this. Number 1 right now in UVIX, the size position, 1,712 of the March 25s, followed by number 2, 1,300 of the DEES 7 puts, again expiring today. So that's that position we were just talking about rolling. Number 3, 1,056 of the Jan 15 puts. Number 4, 916 of the Jan 10 calls. And rounding out the top 5 out there in the UVIX size positions, about 900 of the Jan 9s. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with, what are your thoughts on UVIX? I know this has been your preferred of the SVIX, UVIX twins out there. Are you trading it? What are your thoughts? And then B, what are your thoughts on our friend here picking up these 7 puts, making some decent money on them, and deciding to keep the party alive for 1 more week, sir?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. The The option volume in some of these ETPs is definitely not slow today. There's plenty to do. Look at UVXY. The 7 puts are blowing up right now. They're currently trading 4 cents. Not a bad little play.
Yes, you're getting ahead of me into our old friend UVXY out here. I know people are going to ask, Mr. Meatball, so let's just set the record straight. Have you heard any more info on the impending UVXY reverse split, sir?
No, I have not.
There you go. So let me just head off your questions now, listeners. We have not heard anything out there on that front. UVXY continuing to go the way of the dodo today, down 0.75 of a point this week. Was at about a 7 handle exactly when we kicked off the show, and still, as Meatball alluded to, still flirting with that 7 handle right now, which is probably why those 7 puts and 7 calls are both flying fast and furious out there today. We're seeing 130,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV 214,000, down about 7,000 from where it was this time last week. But UVXY starting to maybe claw its way back. We'll see if UVIX can continue to eat into that one, or if UVXY can maintain its claim. Maybe it'll be a race to whoever reverse splits first. Whoever announces that split first is going to certainly attract a lot of paper. So maybe that should be a consideration for those folks out there. How nice would that be, UVXY with a 70 handle, listeners? That would be just a fun gift from the Vol Gods to all of you out there to kick off 2023. Let's look at the top positions out here in UVXY. In the top 10, we have 7-3 calls over puts, which again, kind of strange, not the way UVXY usually trades, but intriguing stuff. Let's do a quick top 5 out here, then we'll look at what's trading today. Number 5 in the top positions, 15,000 of the Jan 12 calls. Number 4, 16,000 of the DEES expiring next week 8s. Number 3, 17,000 of the DEES 8s expiring today. So maybe we'll see some roll in action there. Number 2, 21,000 of the Jan 75s. That's a fun one. And then number 1, 23,000 of the Jan 10 calls. So all over the place there, the listeners. We were talking about these 7 puts, I do believe, the number 6 position last week. They were flirting with those. They had a week to go. Now we are kissing that 7 strike yet again. We have said it before. I will say it again. UVXY is the heartbreaker of all heartbreakers out there. It will play with your strike. It will tease you on expiration day, and then it will move violently away and just leave you in tears. And it has done so many, many times. And it looks like it's poised to do so yet again today, listeners. As we said, a lot of paper going up today, including 13,000 of the 7 calls expiring today and 12,000 of the 7 puts also expiring today. So intriguing stuff out there, followed by about 10,000 of the 7.5 calls. 7,500 for number 4 of the 7 puts, and number 5, 7,000 of the 7.5 calls. Again, these last 2, the 7 puts and 7.5 calls, are all expiring next week. Everything else is expiring today. Mr. Meatball, I know you love yourself a little bit of UVXY. Are you loading up on these 7 puts? You swinging for the fences? What's catching your eye out there today, sir?
Those did just catch my eye. They're 3 cents. Not a bad little play if you think we're going to rally into the close. Not a bad little play at all, because they'll probably come for vol into the close. That would be the kind of natural progression of UVXY if we do get a rally into the bell and they come to buy the market. Now, otherwise you're basically just wasting 3 cents. So, it's not a bad play if you want to throw $30 and see if it turns into 100.
Yeah, I don't hate that one either. That's not a bad, of all the 0-day trading we're seeing going up out there these days. I don't hate that one. It's certainly, given the tendency of the market right now, it would seem to maybe be in the favor of those. But again, UVXY is a heartbreaker, listener. So if you come to play on those, be prepared to give away your 3 cents to the market gods. Let's head on out to a good old VXX. Was at about a 1430 when we kicked off the show. It puts it down exactly a point on the week. As of right now, it's at about a 1440, so it's gained about a 1/10 of a point back. Other than that, not a heck of a lot going up out there. 30,000 contracts on the tape today. Even though the ADV is going in the right direction, 70,000 contracts is the ADV now. It's up 5,000, so we're starting to slowly see VXX come back to life. I don't think we'll ever see it, and maybe Mark, maybe you disagree, but I don't think we'll ever see it regain that position where it could vie with VIX options themselves. There were days not too long ago on the show, listeners, where we would see VXX options outpacing VIX options. It was, I wouldn't say a routine occurrence, but a fairly common occurrence on the show. And then, of course, all the drama with Barclays this year, and that seemed to really just cut the legs out from under this product. And a lot of people, myself included, have kind of washed their hands of it. I do watch it, and we talk about it on the show, but I have not touched VXX in quite some time, and probably no plan to do so anytime in the near future. But still intriguing stuff. Mark, would you agree with that sentiment? Do you think the glory days of VXX vying for the vol crown are behind it?
Well, yeah, I think the debacle that UBS caused likely did that in. I don't think you're going to see VXX making a run at VIX anytime soon. In fact, I'm a little surprised people are still trading UVXY with UVIX on available. It's a way better product. Far more interesting, if you ask me, to actually trade.
Yeah, and continuing to race each other to zero. We shall see who gets there or who gets the reverse split first. Back to VXX listeners, such as it is, let's do a quick top 5 out there. Number 1, almost 31,000 of the Jan 15 calls. So there are some folks still playing out here. Number 2, 22,000 of the Jan 17 calls. Number 3, 18, almost 19,000 of the Jan 17 puts. Number 4, 18,000 of the Jan 13 puts. And number 5, 16,000 of the March 20 calls. That said, listeners, if you enjoy yourself some VXX, if it's working for you, far be it from us to dissuade you here on the show. Trade what works for you. Trade what you like. It's just for us. I think a lot of its usefulness has gone by the wayside. It's useful to watch. I've said it before. It's a good indicator for a lot of you who maybe don't have the time or the inclination to keep up with the VIX futures term structure. It's a good surrogate for that. But outside of that, I think a lot of its utility has waned. We still did see, listeners, even though earnings season has waned, we still did see a lot of the lingering impact of some names popping off this week, because we still had some names throwing their data into the wind, into the ether this week, including General Mills on Tuesday. Nike really seemed to be the genesis for that rally we saw earlier this week. Then FedEx and BlackBerry, that was all on Tuesday. Wednesday, we had RAD and Micron. Just as Nike seemed to lift the market, Micron seemed to suck it right back down. Thursday, we had CarMax, so some interesting check-ins out there on the used car market, which has been no shortage of drama. Not surprising, no real big names popping off today before the bell. No one wants to be the last name to pop off before the holiday weekend out there, listeners. Nevertheless, though, we do have more earnings move results, and earnings season reports for you over there at the mothership. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place for you to go to get access to all those goodies. If you did that, you'd see that the earnings season report hanging out at about 120% right now. That number 1 week, the first week, was the lightest of the season at 85%. Then right behind it, week 2 was just, I don't know how to describe it, 224%, the most aggressive outperformance week we've ever seen for the number of years now that we've been running models on this stuff. That's a lot. Number 3, week 3, we had 115%, so still outperformance. Week 4, 133%. Week 5, 105%, so still outperforming all the way through week 5. You get to week 6, it comes in a little bit lighter, 96%. But then again, you also have to factor in how many names are reporting in those weeks, listeners. So the heaviest weeks are going to be week 3 and week 4 and week 5, and those all outperform. So impressive stuff. All that baking into a 120% average for the season, listeners. So impressive stuff out there. Again, the most robust season we have ever seen since we've been running these numbers. No new earnings entries or exits today. It is the holiday season. Got to give those ORATs folks a bit of a break out there. But we are tracking for your trading pleasure 82 long straddles and 49 short straddles. As we keep on rolling, listeners, let's get into a real quick volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Volatility Voicemail, the portion of the show where you folks take the reins with your questions, your comments. We also turn the spotlight back on you like we did this week. First, let's pay off last week's question of the week really quickly. We asked you a good timely end of the year question. Which option strategy have you used the most in 2022? Gave you 4 choices, gave you the butterflies and condors, so your spreads with wings, your long calls, your call spreads, your long puts and your put spreads, or your short puts and put spreads. And the short put spread ran away with it, 32.2%. So a lot of you out there selling puts and put spreads right now. Maybe trying to take advantage of some sell-offs to nibble, get in on some names where you think the levels are attractive. Either way, a lot of love for short puts out there. Followed by number 2, long calls and call spreads, 27.1%. Number 3, butterflies and condors, so your spreads with wings. I thought these get a little bit more love. They did not. 23.7%, so coming in at number 3. And then bringing up the rear, a trade I definitely thought would get more love just because of the surface context for the year, listeners, would be long puts and put spreads. No love for those at all, only 16.9%. Maybe because you have such an informed and educated audience. You know it's been a challenging year to really be long puts and make money with them. So maybe some of you got burnt by that. Maybe you just wanted to avoid it. Either way, no love out there for the long puts. But let's get to this question of this week. What is your love amassing around this week, listeners? Let's find out. Our question of the week this week, Mr. Meatball. It's the holiday season, and many stocks are looking cheaper heading into the new year. If you could receive a gift of a 10% out of the money call expiring December 31st of next year on one of these 4 names, which one would it be? Let me emphasize, this is a gift. This is a free call. A lot of you said, I don't want to pay money. You don't have to pay any money. Read the word gift. It's a free call. You're just someone is putting a free call in your stocking. Which one would you like it to be? We gave you 4 choices: Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, or Apple. Mr. Meatball, if your wife put in your holiday stocking a 10% out of the money call expiring at the end of the year on one of those 4 names, which one would you hope it would be? And then B, what do you think our audience is picking, sir?
Well, I think the most upside is in Amazon, so I would want Amazon. That would be the call that I would want, and I would be happy to receive as a gift from you, Mark. Thank you.
In your holiday stocking, it is coming, sir. And what do you think our audience wants?
They're probably saying Apple.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. Apple is kind of, it's close. It's close between Apple and Amazon. It has been all week long. People have been jostling. We have about a couple hours left, listeners, so if you haven't gotten in there yet, on the podcast side, you might be just under the gun. Probably not. You're probably going to miss the deadline, which is why you got to get in over at Options. You should be following us throughout the week, listeners, because we try to retweet it throughout the week so everyone can get a chance to play along. Right now, Apple, 31.6%. Followed by number 2, the Amazonians, 29.5%. Tesla, 25.3%. A lot of you folks arguing if it's just a 10% out of the money call, Tesla can move that in a day. I'm just going to take Tesla just for the sheer potential for its movement. I can certainly see that argument as well. 25.3% for Tesla. And bringing up the rear, no love for Facebook Meta, only 13.7%. You folks want nothing to do with the old Zuck. Let's see if you want anything to do with the Vol, because it is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball, the portion of the show where we attempt to wrestle with the vol gods, see what they have in store for us in the coming weeks, listeners. And we got some firm 21 handles here. SPKX about to break it at about a 21 even coming into the start of this segment. Spikes at about a 21.44. And you know what, listeners? I am splitting both uprights here on the show. If I can get to the right one here. There we go. Yes, there we go. All right, so there we go. I have to see where we were. I was at 21.33, I do believe. It was Andrew last week, I do believe. So it was Andrew on the show at a 19.5 or 19.25 out there. So no joy for him. I was at 21.33 and looking right, splitting the uprights, right? So close to spikes within almost. It's a 0.11, listeners, for spikes. Let me see if I re-rack spikes right now, will it have dropped a 0.01? Oh, it's just there, listeners. All right, so I'm going to tell you what, Mr. Meatball. A holiday gift. I am there. I'm 0.1 effectively away on spikes. I will claim my winner chicken dinner. Probably going to be my final crystal ball bullseye for me on the year. But we'll see. I have to add up all the totals and see who the winner is for the year. But this was a tight one. A lot of people were fading vol. We had Mr. Once and Future Dr. VIX. He was talking about 19.5 on the show. See, a lot of people were thinking Mr. Rock Lobster 19.25. A lot of people were thinking we had a lot less vol in store for us. But the answer was about a 21 and change, listeners. All right, I get the winner chicken dinner this week, which means, Mr. Meatball, I will let you go first. What are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
I'm going to go 1991.
An excellent year. And there we go, 1991. And perhaps an interesting vol prognostication. All right, for myself, can I get 2 bullseyes in a row to end the year? That's a tall order. I don't know. It's been challenging. I was trying to buck the vol downside trend a lot over the last couple of weeks. It hasn't worked out for me too well over the last month, except for this week. Looking pretty good this week. So yeah, right about 21 even in VIX, 21, almost 21.5 in spikes. It is next week. It is the end of the year. It is holidays. I do kind of feel some erosion as well. Will we get SI of the 20 handle? Probably. Will we stay there through the end of the week? That is the question. Mr. Meatball is already right below the 20 handle. I don't hate that. I'm going to say a little bit higher. I'm going to say we reverberate back up. I'm going to say 2036 for this time next week. All right, listeners, that's your market for vol next week. For our final vol views of the year next week, 1991 for the Meatball and 2036 for me. All right, listeners, that is going to do it for vol views this week. But before we go, Mr. Meatball, if folks have listened to this whole show for a full hour and their head is swirling with volatility questions, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, come to optionpit.com. I'm writing a volatility-based blog every day. Been pointing out some really good things this week, so make sure you come and check us out, optionpit.com, and read my blog posts.
Optionpit.com is the place to go to get those vol posts in. And, of course, you know where to go to learn more about all things spikes. Let's go to the Volatility Hub, listeners. Newly launched, newly christened, thevolatilyhub.com is the place to go. That'll get you spikes. That'll get you VSPKES, a.k.a. the Viking. That'll get you a Sparky and SPKX. That'll get you everything in the spikes universe and then some. So if you want the mother lode of spikes volatility data, the Volatility Hub is the place to go. We got to get on out of here. I am ostensibly on vacation, listeners. I hope for all you pro folks you enjoyed the explosion of pro content, double pro Q&As, everything else we did for you folks last week. I will be heading out of the Southern studio now. Obviously, no shows on Monday for the holiday weekend here. So hope all of you out there, no matter what you celebrate, have a great holiday. And then we'll see you back here for the rest of our shows next week, all the way through to next Friday and the final volatility views of 2022. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about spikes at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.